Words are wind, and the wind that blows exiles across the narrow sea seldom blows them back. That boy Viserys Targaryen spoke of a return as well. He slipped through my fingers at Dragonstone, only to spend his life wheedling after sellswords. The Beggar King, they called him, in the Free Cities. Stannis Baratheon to Justin Massey. The Winds of Winter sample chapters. Theon 1. Prince Viserys Targaryen, known as King Viserys III to some, the Beggar King to others, was the last male claimant for the Iron Throne after the death of his father, the Mad King, during Robert's Rebellion in 283 AC. While there were some other Targaryen descendants who still lived, they had given up their claim to the throne decades ago, leaving the long and storied history of not just House Targaryen, but of Illyrio on the shoulders of the young Viserys. He was born in King's Landing in 276 AC to King Aerys II Targaryen and his sister wife, Queen Rhaella, and was their first child to survive in the 17 years since their son Rhaegar, after multiple stillbirths, miscarriages, and infant deaths. The birth of a son did delight Aerys, whom had grown distant and mistrusting of his heir, Rhaegar. Viserys was said to be a small babe, but robust, bearing all the typical features of old Illyrio. By this time, however, Aerys' madness had already begun to set in deeply. His paranoia had made him fear for the infant's life beyond any reason or logic. The Kingsguard watched the babe day and night, and Rhaella was forbidden to be alone with her son for fear she would kill the babe to spite her husband. Aerys insisted that his own personal food taster drink from the breast of the prince's wet nurse to make sure she had not smeared poison on her nipples. The king burned all the gifts sent by Westerosi lords, thinking they could be cursed. When his elder brother, Rhaegar, kidnapped Lyanna Stark, thus starting Robert's Rebellion, Viserys was only 6 years of age, with his mother managing to shelter him from much of the war, and his father's growing intense madness, the best she was able to. When Rhaegar was killed at the Trident, his father named him heir, instead of Rhaegar's own children. As the rebels marched on King's Landing, Aerys sent the now pregnant Rhaella and Viserys to Dragonstone for their own safety. With Aerys' death and the murder of Rhaegar's children during the sack of King's Landing, it left the young boy the sole Targaryen claimant to the Iron Throne, with some on Dragonstone going as far as declaring him king. In 284 AC, 9 months after they had fled the Red Keep, Rhaella Targaryen gave birth to a daughter, Daenerys, during a storm which destroyed most of the Targaryen fleet anchored at Dragonstone. Sadly, Rhaella died giving birth to Daenerys. When Stannis Baratheon arrived to take the castle, the garrison were prepared to turn the children over to him. But Sir Willem Darry and 4 other loyal men managed to smuggle the Targaryen children out of the castle and aboard a small ship in the dead of night. While the Baratheon fleet did attempt to pursue Darry, the small ship easily outsailed the heavy war galleys of Stannis. Viserys and his newborn sister would spend the next few years in the free city of Braavos. However, the true series of events that happened over this time is not very clear, given there is little historical record of it. But what we do know is that both Targaryen children lived under the close protection of Sir Willem Darry, somewhere in Braavos, in a house with a notably red door. We also know that Darry was in secret communication with House Martell, the house of Rhaegar's wife, Elia Martell, who had been murdered alongside her children during the sack of King's Landing. The Sea Lord of Braavos was a witness to the agreement that Viserys would take Princess Arianne Martell, daughter to Prince Doran, as bride in exchange for Dorne supporting his claim to the Iron Throne. However, it would seem that Viserys himself was never made aware of this pact. Some put forward that given his age he was too immature when it was decided, and he was not ready for the information or able to fully understand its meaning. 5 years after fleeing Dragonstone in 289 AC, Willem fell ill, and eventually died. When Willem died, so did the protection he offered Viserys, and his link back to Westeros was now gone, with the Targaryen children left to fend for themselves. Their servants stole what little money the children had, leaving Viserys and his sister, Daenerys, impoverished. They were put out of the house in Braavos soon after. Now they had little to offer the Sea Lord. Viserys and Daenerys began to wander the free cities up and down the narrow sea as guests of powerful citizens to show off to their friends. After all, who would not wish to host the last of the blood of old Illyrio? From Braavos, it is said they went to Myr, next to Tyrosh, on to Cahor, Volantis and Lys, never staying long at one location. Viserys was convinced they were being followed by the hired knives and assassins of King Robert Baratheon, something that was in fact partially true. While originally they were welcomed into the homes of these powerful citizens of the free cities, their welcomes eventually faded, and they were forced to sell the last of their possessions to survive. It is said that selling his mother's crown took the very last joy from Prince Viserys, leaving only anger, resentment, and rage. Over time, men started to call him the Beggar King, but they were still never as bold to do so to his face. At some point, Viserys feasted the captains of the Golden Company, in hopes the famous sellswords might take up his cause and restore him to the Iron Throne. They ate his food and heard his pleas, but only laughed at him. After all, it would be no easy war, and how would Viserys pay for their service? He could offer land and lordship in Westeros, but he did not rule the Seven Kingdoms. Who have I been betrothed to all these years? It makes no matter. He is dead. The old ones are so frail. Was it a broken hip? A chill? Gout? It was a pot of molten gold. We princes make our careful plans, and the gods smash them all away. Arianne Martell and Prince Doran Martell, A Feast for Crows Chapter 40, Princess in the Tower. While his relationship with his sister Daenerys was initially loving and warm, being the only family she has ever known, over time, Viserys did grow to resent his sister for the death of their mother during her birth, and began to treat her abusively, both in terms of cruel words and physically. He would frequently warn her not to wake the dragon, in other words, incite his anger, a warning that some speculate that his mother had once told Viserys regarding his own father, the Mad King Aerys. Viserys taught Daenerys all he knew of Westerosi history and the history of House Targaryen, teaching her to take pride in her family's heritage. However, his point of view of the legacy of House Targaryen, and especially Robert's rebellion in particular, was quite warped from reality. Traditionally, prior to the Dance of the Dragons, incestuous marriages, especially sibling marriages, were common among House Targaryen. Daenerys always expected she would marry Viserys when she came of age, as Viserys had often told her, after all, the line must be kept pure, and that Targaryens did not mingle their blood with that of lesser beings. Given they were the last two living Targaryens at this time that were known, it would have made sense in many regards. However, given how small the family now was, and their lack of power, political matches for both Viserys and Daenerys would be a powerful tool to gain friends in high places. In 298 AC, Viserys and Daenerys had been guests for half a year at the manse of Magister Illyrio in Pentos. During this time, one servant, a girl trained in Lys, was purchased by Illyrio to please the would-be Beggar King and keep him from claiming Daenerys' maidenhead, as he was putting plans into motion without Viserys' knowledge. It appears that Illyrio had taken a keen interest in returning Viserys to the Iron Throne in return for rewards upon his ascension. Thus, Illyrio convinced Viserys to arrange a marriage between Daenerys and Khal Drogo, a powerful Dothraki horse lord, whom promised Viserys an army which he could use to conquer the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. The overconfident Viserys believed he could conquer Westeros with only 10,000 Dothraki, due to the fact he believed that the houses of Westeros would rise up to support him upon his landing. He would be Aegon the Conqueror come again. He believed that at the very least, the Tyrells, Redwynes, Darrys, Greyjoys and Martells would rally to him, and that the small folk would cry out for the return of House Targaryen, despising the usurper Robert Baratheon. Viserys did agree to the match, but did strongly resent having to give up control of his sister. It is believed he attempted to claim her maidenhead that night before the wedding, but found her room under guard, for this very reason, to ensure that Viserys did not undo years of plans by Illyrio. The following day, Daenerys was married to Khal Drogo, with Viserys said to be miserable at the feast afterwards. He did not like the fact he was made to sit below his sister. He gifted his sister 3 handmaidens, one a former pleasure garden whore, to instruct Daenerys how to keep her new husband happy. At the feast, Viserys met the exiled Westerosi knight Ser Jorah Mormont, with Mormont entering Viserys' service. After the wedding, Khal Drogo's Khalisar left for Vaes Dothrak to present the new Khaleesi, Daenerys, to the Dosh Khaleen. Viserys had wrongly assumed that as soon as the wedding was done, Drogo's army would be his. Thus, Viserys insisted on travelling along with Daenerys to ensure that the Khal honoured his support, despite Illyrio's warning against it. Over time, Viserys became more convinced that Drogo was delaying the fulfillment of his promise, and grew increasingly insistent on making a start to the invasion. From his point of view, he sold Daenerys to Drogo, and that the Khal has not yet paid him for her. Although both Illyrio Mopatis and Jorah Mormont tried to explain to the king that the Dothraki do not buy or sell, but rather receive gifts and give gifts back eventually in return. Viserys tried to get his sister to persuade Drogo with her new position of power, but with this power, she had also started to push her brother away. This all very much came to a head during the journey across the Dothraki Sea. It is believed Daenerys wished to experience the Dothraki Sea in solitude. She requested that Jorah tell Viserys and the rest of her Khals to stay behind. But Viserys became infuriated at Daenerys giving him a command, and verbally and physically assaulted her. She did defend herself, and one of her young warriors, one of her Khals, snapped a whip around Viserys' neck. Daenerys commanded that he not be harmed, only that his horse be taken away, forcing Viserys to walk. Viserys commanded that Jorah hurt Daenerys and kill the Dothraki for this insult, but the knight ignored Viserys' orders and enforced Daenerys'. You were supposed to be my wife, to bear me children with silver hair and purple eyes, to keep the blood of the dragon pure. I took care of you. I taught you who you were. I fed you. I sold our mother's crown to keep you fed. You hurt me. You frightened me. Only when you woke the dragon, I loved you. You sold me. You betrayed me. No, you were the betrayer. You turned against me, against your own blood. They cheated me. Your horsey husband and his stinking savages. They were cheats and liars. They promised me a golden crown and gave me this. You could have had your crown. My sun and stars would have won it for you, if only you had waited. Viserys in A Dream of Daenerys Targaryen, A Dance with Dragons, Chapter 71, Daenerys 10. At Vaes Dothrak, Daenerys wished to reconcile with her brother, and prepared gifts for him, including a new Dothraki-style clothing to replace his soiled garments. However, when Daenerys sent for him, he took offense that she would send a whore to give him a command, striking the woman, before angrily approaching Daenerys. He mocked the clothes and the idea that he should dress like a savage, began to assault Daenerys until she defended herself. This only made Viserys angrier as he stormed off. The day of the ritual ceremony for Daenerys' unborn child, Jorah manages to stop Viserys from stealing Daenerys' 3 dragon eggs, which he intended to sell to traders of Vaes Dothrak for gold to buy himself a sellsword army, for the 3 dragon eggs would certainly do so. The feasting Dothraki, Viserys then goes off and drinks to his sorrow. The feasting Dothraki are then greatly offended when the now drunk Viserys enters Drogo's hall wielding a sword, as blades are banned in the sacred city of Vaes Dothrak, with it being forbidden to shed a free man's blood there. Khal Drogo does not let Viserys sit at the high table, but rather tells him to sit with the cripples and the boys, with all the Dothraki laughing and mocking Viserys. Viserys draws his sword, angering the Dothraki further, and threatens Daenerys' unborn child, while insisting that Drogo give him his crown. In response, Drogo had Viserys seized by his blood riders, where he melts down a belt of golden medallions, and upends the pot over Viserys' head, fatally but bloodlessly crowning him with molten gold. Viserys' life is seen as a sad tale of a young boy forced to grow up fast, being used by others as a tool for power. He spent his whole life running from city to city, trying his best to care for his sister, all the while dreaming of reclaiming his lost kingdom, a kingdom that he would never see again. But despite the tragic aspects of Viserys Targaryen, he is also a warning of the arrogance and hubris power can bring, even if you do not realistically hold it. Many even wonder if he was starting to show the same signs of madness as his father had done. The truth is, we will never know what kind of king Viserys Targaryen could have been, but many rightly assume he would have been a poor one, and his reign bloody.